I get my inspiration a lot from other people, from stories, from connections, and I definitely don't usually just compose something out of nowhere. I'm always like, okay, what does the music need and where am I going with my piece?
Welcome to Uncovering Music Ideas. I'm Mehrnoush Zolfagari. In this episode, we are joined by Devina Boughton, a remarkable trumpet player, vocalist, composer, and educator originally from the US, with Finnish roots. Their music crosses borders, blending global influences with personal expression. Tervetuloa, welcome Devina. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I've been really inspired by your work and I'm excited to dive into your journey. Could you describe your first real connection with music and what made it special for you?
Well, I think that I was always kind of lucky that in some way music was surrounding me in my childhood. And I do have one memory where when I was very small, my mother, she took me to like a daycare while she went to go sing in a community choir. And then I was really grumpy and I didn't want to be in this daycare, so she decided, okay, I'll just take Devina to the choir. And I was very like silent and listening and focused. And so then from then on, then she was like taking me to her choir to just listen. So apparently I was quite interested in music from that age already.
So nice. Mm-hmm. Interesting that how both family and early experiences came together for you so naturally.
Yeah.
What made you choose the trumpet as your main instrument and what kept you going when it got challenging?
That's a good question. Well, so my mom's brother Mark, he's a professional trumpet player, Mark Burney, and he lived on the other side of the country in Boston, where he's still in the Boston area where he still lives, and so he was kind of inspiring me from afar. And then he gave me a trumpet when I was small, so we had one around, and then I decided to start playing it when I was around 9 years old. So I started from the inspiration from my uncle.
That's such a great story, and in my opinion, you actually found your own sound on the trumpet.
Thank you. That means a lot. That's one of my biggest goals right now is really thinking about the sound in terms of the trumpet.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. You mentioned your early choir experiences, and now you are also leading and teaching in choir. Would you like to say what inspired you to take step into that role while your trumpet career is already growing so strongly?
Well, thank you, Mehrnoush. Well, choir has always been a big part of my life. When I was 7 years old, I joined Pacific Youth Choir in the Portland, Oregon area, and then I was in that choir for 11 years, and that was a very formative experience, I would say, growing up. And then when I moved to Boston, then I also was singing in many choirs there, in a jazz choir, in a Balkan choir, and then I co-founded a choir with my friend Chloe, who is now also a choir conductor in Minneapolis. And when I came to Finland, I knew that I wanted to continue being involved in some way with choirs. And so I sang for several years in Lempikuoro, and then when I was feeling really like, okay, I would like to start directing a choir again, and I was looking around, and then I heard that Symbiosikuora was looking for a new director, and they are the student and alumni choir of the Helsinki University Biology Department, but now open for everybody. And so this, I went and checked it out, and met with the choir, and I immediately felt like, okay, this is a really wonderful environment, and I would like to grow this choir and help them like grow as a community as well, because I think also after the Corona times, it's been difficult for choirs to sort of come back.
That's true.
Yeah, so that was a long story, but basically I feel super passionate about choir singing and community music, and I have been really happy to be now directing them for a little bit over 2.5 years. So,
oh, perfect.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how you made space for both performing and guiding others, which isn't easy to make that kind of balance.
Thank you. I think you have to be quite passionate about it.
Exactly,
So
that's true.
I like to do both. I think if I did just one, then it would be too much of one of those things. So I try to balance those aspects of musicianship. Yeah.
You have Finnish roots, even though you grew up in the US. How did that connection come about, and what did it mean to you to come here and make music in the place that your great-grandparents left?
Yeah, so this is a good question, and I have to say that I never really thought like, yes, I'm going to live in Finland when I was younger, but I was always very curious about my cultural heritage, and I was a part of the Finnish-American community in Oregon, that we would go and visit my grandparents and go to Finnish-American and Scandinavian-American and Nordic-American festivals. My grandmother, she also sang in a Finnish-American choir, so, more choirs appearing in my life. But I was always very curious about what it was like in Finland. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm never going to have a chance to come to Finland. It's super far away. But it was in the back of my mind. And we also were like listening to different folk music cassettes and CDs throughout my childhood. And when it was possible, seeing also Finnish-American and Finnish artists that were coming to Oregon or living in Oregon. So, or in Washington as well. So then this kind of, it always like stayed in the back of my mind, that what would it be like? And then I was doing my undergraduate degree in Boston. I studied at Berkeley, and I was thinking, okay, what are my next steps? And at the time I thought, okay, I will stay in Boston. I was there for almost 5 years, and I worked very hard there to build a community. But I also heard about this grant application for the Fulbright grant. And when I researched more about this Fulbright grant, that you can be like a visiting, for example, in my case, I was a visiting artistic researcher at the Sibelius Academy in our global music department. And this sparked my interest immediately because I had already heard about the department. And then I thought, okay, I can connect together, deepening my studies and learning about my cultural heritage a little bit more. So I applied for that Fulbright grant, and I immediately also started searching for ways to start learning Finnish. And then I also met my friend Vilho in Berkeley and Boston, and asked also, okay, what is it like in Finland? Because I really knew nothing. So then I got some more information, and the more I learned, the more I felt this is really worth it. And then because of miraculous luck and I was really persistent, I got the grant, and I was able to come to Finland a little over 4 years ago.
Wow, interesting. It sounds like so meaningful to reconnect with that part of your roots through music, and it seems that Sibelius Academy gave that space to you for research and learn more and deeply.
Absolutely. It was actually, I think, in that way more meaningful than I thought beforehand. So I feel very grateful that I decided to follow this idea because it ended up becoming a very meaningful experience for me and for my family as well.
That's amazing. Thank you. And why did you choose to study at Sibelius Academy's Global Music Department?
Well, I feel like collaboration, it's super important to me, and also the level of freedom that the department has to follow your own artistic passions. I think that that's something that you rarely find in an academic institution. So I really appreciate the values of the department that are welcoming students from all different backgrounds to come and meet together and be able to have kind of deep conversations about life and music and make connections. So this freedom, it's been very welcome to me, and I think that that space, I really value that space in an academic environment.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come and experience that, and then also there's the added bonus of being able to dive into folk musics in Finland. So I have combined all of these together in my time at Sibelius Academy.
Very nice. And I do agree, Sibelius Academy's Global Music Department really gives you this freedom and space to explore more and find your own sound.
Absolutely.
Yes. Devina, you once mentioned that you are writing your thesis. Would you like to share a bit about your thesis and what you are learning about connecting with Finnish-American and Nordic diaspora communities?
So I just did my field trip for my thesis research, which was in my home state of Oregon. And I'm doing both ethnographic and autoethnographic research in Finnish and Nordic diaspora communities in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So I'm really diving into kind of questions of identity formation, community music, and what does it mean to try to keep these communities alive and keep a connection to Nordic and Finnish heritage in the West Coast. And this also doesn't limit only people that have roots from Finland. I also wanted to be, or from the Nordic diaspora overall, I wanted to be very open that anyone that is involved with these communities is a part of that kind of connection. So I went and I did interviews with people in different communities, and I was also a guest choir conductor with the Portland Nordic Chorus, and this was a really wonderful experience to get to know them. And we performed at this midsummer festival in Portland, and then I also gave a performance lecture in the Suomi Hall in Astoria, Oregon, which is where my mom's family is from and where my great-grandparents settled after moving from Finland, from Rauma and Kalavia areas. So in Astoria, I also was talking about my special interests in these Nordic shepherd's horns. So that was super wonderful, and I got to kind of both share my own experiences and reflect and dive into my own experiences. And it was super interesting having a new perspective of coming back to these Finnish-American communities after having lived in Finland for 4 years. So I felt like, wow, okay, I have a super different positionality now, and also being able to connect with people there who actually speak Finnish, which is not so common. And yeah, so this was really wonderful. And I also interviewed Joan Paddock, who is a shepherd's horn player, and she has Norwegian roots. And that was very rare to find someone in Oregon that's also playing these shepherd's horns. So I got to have very unusual and special kinds of conversations. And yeah, I was originally only going to focus on the Finnish-American communities, but I realized that this is actually impossible because we are not in like a small bubble. And in many of these cases, for example, this Nordic choir that I was conducting, it was originally separate choirs, like Finnish-American choir, Swedish-American choir, but then they got too small, so they had to band together and form one group. So now they are all kind of sharing their own experiences and communities, so they are not seeing it so much separate, they're seeing it more as like one kind of shared experience of a diaspora communities that, okay, what people happened to come to these areas. Yeah, and I also visited this Nordic Heritage Park in Astoria that's commemorating these diaspora communities and the history. So, yeah, there are many different layers to this, but there's a lot of reflection and research that I still have to do. But yeah, it's been super nice to take some time for that and to really try to deepen my thoughts and connections to these communities, and also to thinking about community music as a tool to strengthen your feelings of cultural heritage.
Amazing. That sounds like such meaningful and powerful work and project, not only musically but also culturally.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy that it's been moving forward, and yeah, I was really nervous before I went on this trip that how is it gonna go, but then it's actually really good to do the research. So
That's
I think
true.
that helps to be open and to be flexible and just to dive into it.
Yes, wish you the best on your journey.
Thank you.
You've been part of many different music scenes: jazz, Balkan, classical, global, and you've found a unique voice on the trumpet, especially when it comes to microtones, which isn't easy. I want to ask you, how did you find your way to explore these kind of scenes?
Well, I'm very passionate, as you know, about different tuning systems, and I discovered about microtones when I was playing in a Balkan band as a teenager in Oregon, and then I started to notice that okay, there are different things in the tuning, and I started to pay attention to tuning also from singing in this choir. That how do you kind of like how do you think about tuning and how do you understand tuning? And that's when I really started to realize that, okay, the piano is just one way of thinking about tuning with the 12-tone equal temperament. And then when I got into university in college in Boston, I started to take a microtonal composition and ear training course.
Wow.
This was kind of like diving into the deep end of the pond because we immediately started to try to write counterpoint and ear training in 72 equal divisions of the octave. And I remember actually my professor showed us a video of the kanun and was talking about, okay, here are some non-Western tuning systems, but also talking about that these are also found in Western tuning systems, but actually they are not so much talked about in the kind of common conception of Western music theory. So it really, I feel that like different tuning systems are everywhere, but you have to kind of look for them and be open to them, because otherwise the piano tends to be sort of the default in Western thinking with music theory. And I'm very passionate to be open to more tuning systems. Of course, I also use the piano a lot, and but I think that there's a whole spectrum of sounds and sound colors that we need to be aware of. And I also think that so much is possible on the trumpet, even with, I just have a 3-valve trumpet with one D tuning slide. I don't even have an E tuning slide, but I use alternate fingerings in the overtone series, and also a lot of kind of just trying to think in my head the tone that I want and then hoping and praying that it will come out. So but I try a lot to be constantly educating myself and learning about different tuning systems, and also from a very like intuitive way. I'm not the most mathematical person, so some people are diving really deep into like kind of equations and ratios, but I'm more kind of doing a little bit of theory and then really trying to go with my ear a lot.
Yes, that's impressive how you move so smoothly between Arabic, Turkish, and Persian tunings on the trumpet.
Well, I definitely am not so knowledgeable about them, but the collaboration for me, it's really important, and using my ear and being open to feedback. So I'm absolutely not an expert in these, but I'm trying to be making it possible to collaborate.
Yeah, but you play so beautifully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone's path can have moments of uncertainty or questioning. Have there been times when you've questioned your path and direction, and how did you navigate through them?
Yes, I think as a musician, we are going kind of against many status quos of society. And the first time that I really questioned that what am I doing was during the pandemic, because I was in Boston. I was really, gigging a lot and teaching music theory and being very active in the scene and going in 100%. And then when the quarantine and the pandemic came, it went from like 100 to 0, and all of a sudden I had no work, and I was like super lost, and I went into a total crisis and I didn't know what to do. But luckily I had some support systems, and I decided that, okay, I'm gonna try to do some side job, and I have some close friends who work in conservation work in the United States, so kind of like with the forests, protecting the environment, and they suggested me about this job to do conservation work for like a short period of time. They have kind of these like seasonal field work opportunities, and so my friend Sage, she said like, okay, if you're not afraid to go camping in the woods with strangers and learn how to use a chainsaw, then they will hire you. So I said, okay, why not? Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Yep. So I got hired by Northwest Youth Corps, an AmeriCorps kind of organization. So I did two separate terms of this job, and it was actually super life-changing for me to understand that I can learn from all aspects of life, not only from music. And I felt a very strong connection to the nature in the Pacific Northwest, which I still feel very connected to. And so there I was doing different fire restoration and invasive species removal and planting of native species and trail restoration, and just like living in the woods without the phone. It was a very unique experience that I think about almost every day. So this gave me a lot of kind of hope in flexibility. And being fast forwarding to today, now it's a very uncertain time living in Finland as an international student or as an international freelancer. So I'm trying to keep my mind open that how will I stay in Finland and make things work, but I feel very confident that I want to think like there is always some kind of solution. I just have to be open to thinking outside of the box a little bit. So I'm not kind of like a purist, like, okay, I have to be only a trumpet player and only a musician. That, okay, what else can I also do that can still be enriching in my life? And sometimes you have to make some sacrifices and some compromises. And sometimes, the bureaucracy and the system can be really against you. It's just the truth. But I'm trying to be very flexible and versatile and determined. And sometimes it's very difficult, but those are my thoughts. But I feel that it's very okay to be open to everything in life and not just like only one thing all the time.
Amazing. I can imagine how that unique experience shaped your direction and also helped you to have opened new doors in front of you.
Yeah, and I also got a big passion for trying to do more music and environmental awareness collaboration projects. So that has been also very meaningful coming out of that experience.
So Devina, it's time. We've been really looking forward to hearing your music. Could you describe what you will be performing today and share like the story or the feeling behind it?
Yeah, so I will be performing a composition that I composed called Sisarus hambo, which translates to like sibling hambo. And hambo is a Nordic dance style. And I have a duo with my friend Levähdys called Kietoutumo, which means like the place of intertwining. And in this duo we combine improvisation, our own compositions, and traditional compositions from the Nordic dance and Finnish dance style of folk music. So I was inspired by that, and I composed this piece when I was feeling also very homesick for my younger sibling Orion and for Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. So then this piece slowly developed out of all of those feelings. Raram. da-da-dum, da-ya-dum. Da-ya-da-dum, da-ya-da-da-ya-da-da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-ya. tayaram, tayaratan taram, tavayatan tararam, tarairai, tarairatan tararam, tarairatan taram.
Thank you for that beautiful performance, Devina. It was really nice and so much feeling and emotion.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
And speaking of composition and inspiration, where your ideas usually come from and what's the process like for you?
This is a very big question
I
as
know.
a composer and a performer.
Yes.
I think I get my inspiration a lot from other people, from stories, from connections, and I definitely don't usually just compose something out of nowhere. I'm always like, okay, what does the music need and where am I going with my piece? So usually I try to compose in direct collaboration with the performers and to understand about their instruments and the kind of passions and specialties of the individual performers. So often I will compose very specifically for these individual projects. I also like to work a lot with dualities and with balance between structure and freedom, and between, for example, also improvisation and strict form and composition. So these are informing a lot what kind of material I'm writing, and also with the player, that how much do they want to explore their own sound, or do they really want to try to kind of dive into my sound world that I am creating? So how much of a dialogue we are having with the music. So these are sort of like the three, like, kind of what's the word? These are like the three guidelines that I would think about sometimes in my composing. So yeah, but I've been also trying to think more about the music itself and about the instruments and the sound, so that how much can the music also stand up on its own, no matter who is performing it, that it can adapt for different situations. So that's kind of been on my mind recently, that how can I also compose with that flexibility in mind.
Wow, so inspiring, and I feel your process sounds like connected to both intuition and imagination.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say that's very well said.
Perfect. And as you look ahead, what are your hopes and goals for your music?
Well, I would love to continue making and maintaining strong collaborations with other people and continue working and finding my own sound and balancing being able to compose, perform, collaborate, and also to teach and inspire other people as well. And yeah, I hope to continue working in Finland and also internationally.
That's really beautiful. Wishing you all the best on your journey.
Thank you.
And finally, at the end of each episode, we ask our guests to share a poem which is close to their heart in their own mother tongue. What would you like to share with us?
So I will be reading some poems by Ursula K. Guin. She's one of my favorite authors, and she also lived for many, many years in the Portland area. And yeah, I recommend a lot her works. I really like to read, and she writes kind of like science fiction from an anthropological lens. So I will be reading some poetry by her.
Perfect, thank you.
To the Rain by Ursula Le Guin. Mother rain, many-fold, measureless, falling on fallow, on field and forest, on house roof, low hovel, high tower, down welling waters all washing, wider than cities, softer than sisterhood, vaster than countrysides, calming, recalling. Return to us, teaching our troubled souls in your ceaseless descent, to fall, to be fellow, to feel to the root, to sink in, to heal, to sweeten the sea.
Such a beautiful way to close. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful poem.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Uncovering Music Ideas with Devina. I'm Mernoush. Until next time, when we discover another inspiring musician, remember to subscribe and share this episode with music lovers around the world.